Hi friends, welcome back to Sister in Scripture. We are your hosts, Brooke and Natalie. We are so thankful that you are here today. Today we are going to be recapping Matthew 22 through 28, which is the rest of Matthew. So we're going to be going over a lot. We're going to be going over the death of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, the Great Commission. But what we're going to start is back in chapter 22, where we left off from our last recap. And chapter 22 starts off talking about another parable, the parable of the wedding banquet. And Jesus always talked in parables, and I think that it's confusing for a lot of people, but also really exciting if you can understand it, right? And really learn to break these parables down. One of the reasons that I really love the wedding banquet is starting in verse 8. Now you can go back and listen to this entire chapter whenever you want to. We have it listed on our readings. But starting in verse 8, he says, "Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find.' So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing any wedding clothes. He asked, 'How did you get in here without the wedding clothes, friend?' The man was speechless, and the king told the attendants, 'Tie him hand and foot and throw him outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen.'" And I think that people misread this a lot because they see it as they were angry that he wasn't wearing the right clothes. And I think that a lot of people do that in church. But what I interpret this as, and I think we should look deeper into these things, but he's basically saying, if you're not coming to my banquet, to my feast, basically to relationship with me, wearing the right heart posture, you're not going to be chosen. You're not going to really understand this. If you don't show up to me, if this is selfish, right? If you're coming to me with a selfish heart posture of I want this to bring me gain, I want to walk with Jesus because it's going to make me prosperous, right? Or whatever, or so I can get to heaven, or whatever that may be, it's not the same, right? We have to have the right heart posture of faith and love and adoration for him and for who he is. Because many are invited, but few are chosen. Everybody's invited into relationship with God, but few are chosen because few come, in my opinion, with that right heart posture.
Yeah, and I actually had written down the same thing
Did
about
you?
that wedding guest without having the right garment. And I was like, why was that a big deal? Because originally, he invited all these people,
Mm-hmm.
and then they came, or they didn't come. They
Yeah.
were like, no, I have other things to do. I have other things. And so then he was like, okay, go get anyone that will come. And then you have this one person that comes not
dressed
wearing the
right.
right thing. Yeah, so I was like, why is that a big deal? So one of the commentators that I read about said something like, a lot of times whenever a king would hold a banquet or a big ceremony, they would provide clothes for those that were less fortunate so that they would be dressed appropriately for a wedding. Because if you think of a wedding today, you go and you get dressed up, and you usually wear something really nice to a wedding because it's a celebration.
Right.
And so to not come in with those garments, even if they were available, it's almost like a slap in the face to the host.
Yeah. And I think that that's such a good breakdown, because it shows that if we aren't gonna come to the Father with the tools that are available, right, with adoration of him, but also with knowing that we have work to do here. Romans says, we have an obligation to walk in the Spirit, to do the things that he's calling us to do, to seek righteousness and follow Jesus. This isn't just oh, you believe in God and then you get to do whatever you want. And so I think that is such a kind of a broader answer to a very specific thing that he said, but that's also how Jesus talked, guys. I've reread these gospels so many times throughout my life, and still going through it, doing this, I'm learning so much. There's so much here that he says that we just read over and pass over just to get through the chapter, and it's deep. It's really good. Okay, so finishing chapter 22 basically talks about paying imperial tax to Caesar, and I think I'm going to reference The Chosen again. I really got good wisdom around this whenever I watched that, because I never really understood this as much until I watched that. But they're confused because the Jews of the time, and really anybody that lived in that time that was paying taxes, especially the Jews, though, they believed in the law of Moses, right? They followed the law of Moses. And the law of Moses was all about God and people. It wasn't about Caesar or Augustus or Tiberius or any of the Roman Empire. And so when taxes started and the Romans started charging everybody for taxes, it really got the Jews in this like place of division, because they're like, we live here, so we have to pay these taxes, but we're paying taxes to the enemy, basically to Satan himself is how they viewed him, because Caesar Augustus saw himself as the son of a god, not son of God like Jesus, but he thought he was holy in his own way. And he was very malicious in the way he ran Rome. I mean, most of us know that. And so nothing aligned with God. And so all these Jews are like, well, we follow the Torah, we follow the law of Moses, like we can't pay these taxes. And so they're kind of trying to, in my eyes, almost kind of trying to trip him up, but also really curious about this, because they're like, are you, the son of God, okay with us paying taxes to the enemy, basically? And he replies perfectly. He says, you need to give to Caesar what's Caesar's and to God what's God's. Like, Caesar has authority over this empire right now. He's been put in power. You gotta pay your taxes, guys. You gotta pay your taxes. Okay. So then it moves on, talks about the greatest commandment, which is love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Verse 40 is my favorite. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. And it's not to say that the other ones don't matter, but they all go back to those two. And if those two aren't in motion with the others, then I believe it voids the others, because God is love.
And I don't know what you think of this, but it says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And I don't know if this is just from being in therapy for years, but one of my therapists pointed out one time, like, that the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, like loving yourself is almost another one in there. Like, you have to love yourself before you can love your neighbor.
Yeah.
And that just might be my damaged self talking and not
No, that's so good. That is, because most people don't love themselves.
Yeah, but I also think we as humans are inherently selfish, so in some ways we do love ourselves, but I think sometimes we get to a point where it's so hard to even love ourselves. And so we get a lot of this like, oh, you need to love your neighbor, and you're like, I'm over here struggling. I can barely get by. And I can't love my neighbor. I don't have the capacity to love my neighbor. So how am I supposed to do that? Yeah. But I also think it's the Holy Spirit through us that allows us to love our neighbor.
In that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think also, like you said, like, we are selfish. And so our natural motivation for doing most things is, how does this serve me? And so replacing that with, how does this serve my neighbor, is really important. But if you don't love yourself and see the beauty in what you're doing for your neighbor versus for yourself, then it's really hard to do that. And so I think that's where the first one comes in, where it's like, love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And if your heart, soul, and mind is in love with God, then you're going to naturally want the things of the Spirit, which is love. And so you're going to love yourself differently. And so now you got to lay down your selfishness and love the other people the way you want to love yourself.
Yeah. It's all twisted.
It's all big parable.
It's all together.
It all
goes
connected.
Together. It's all connected.
It is. And that's one of my favorite parts about going deeper into this, is that you see that, like, even Old Testament, everything goes to Jesus. He is like the centerpiece of all of it, even today.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So moving on into chapter 23. So pretty much the entirety of chapter 23 is what's known as the 7 woes to the scribes and Pharisees. And so each of these woes is like, hey, stop doing this.
Yeah. Basically, like, things that they were doing wrong that he was, like, kind of calling them out for. Yeah.
So the first one we see in verse 13, and it says, woe to you, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who enter to go in. So they're preaching the kingdom of heaven, like, you need to do this stuff to get to heaven, but then they're like putting all these rules in place that they seemingly can't ever get into heaven, and they're constantly like badgering them for it. I guess you could say. And then the second one is in verse 15, woe to you, for you travel across the sea and land to make a single proselyte, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much as a child of hell as yourselves. Now, I had to look up what a proselyte was, because I had no idea.
Mine says convert.
a convert.
A convert.
That's pretty much what it is. I looked it up. Webster says that a proselyte is a person who has converted from one opinion, religion, or party to another.
Yeah.
So a convert.
Yep.
Yeah. So pretty much they were going and they were converting people. And then they, again, were putting all these rules in place to the point where you make him a child of hell because they can't live up to all the standards.
Yeah, and it makes it to where, which is all of basically Romans tries to explain and debunk, is that this is not a works thing. This isn't you can work your way up to heaven and so get all these rules right and then you'll be good. And that's what this is saying. It's like that's what they were doing to everybody.
Yeah, you can't. And then the next one is talking to them about swearing by things. They were talking about swearing by gold in the temple, by swearing by the temple itself. And he was like, no, right, you blind men, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and everything on it, and whoever swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. So pretty much they were saying, just let your yes be yes and your no be no. That was that's in another reference that I did not write down, but we hear that often. Like, don't be swearing by a bunch of other things. Say what you mean and mean what you say. All right, and then where were we at? Number 4. They say, woe to you, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. So essentially, he was saying, you're tithing all these itty-bitty small things, like dill, mint, cumin, but you're completely neglecting the fact that I tell you to love justice, love mercy, be faithful.
Yep.
You should have done that without neglecting the others. Now, I did read a little commentary about this, that it was talking about how even though those were little things, those weren't necessarily things that had to be tithed. But they were to the point of all these rules and regulations that they were tithing every little thing that they grew in their garden.
Yeah. And it's a work, like a show thing, I think.
It's like a work-based. Yeah, and that's what the next one was. So the next one is in verse 25, woe to you, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence.
Yeah.
You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate, and the outside may also be clean. And I'm going to go ahead and read the next one because it's very similar. Woe to you, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanliness. So you outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Yeah, and both of those are very similar. So he's saying, hey, you're cleaning the outside. You're making the outside look pretty to everybody else, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness, even though you think you're following the law.
Yeah, and greed and self-indulgence, and it is so true when you look at everything that the Pharisees stood for and how they approached Jesus. Like, what they were angry at Jesus for was contradicting this part of it, with the fact that, like, they were getting called out. They were getting called out, and the fact that they were religious and they were following the rules, but he's like, you are missing the entire point of this. Like, you are so far gone, and you're bringing all these people with you. Like, you are supposed to be the men of God. You are supposed to be who these people are learning from, and you are steering them down this road of, self-indulgence and greed and hypocrisy and wickedness. And we see that same thing today. That mindset has followed from then all the way until now. And the reason is what we talked about before, is that selfishness, because these Pharisees, they were so worried about everybody seeing them as correct that they were never willing to do the internal work on themselves to be correct, right? And so it wasn't that they weren't, I think, unwilling to, but their hyper focus became, how is everybody perceiving me, not how is God perceiving me. And when we're too focused on everybody else and them seeing us as perfect because we're supposed to be perfect Christians, we get into that world of hypocrisy. And that's why people look at Christians as hypocrites, because we're like, no, we've got it all together. We feel peace and joy all the time. No, we don't. No, we don't. We have suffering and trials and tribulations and hurt, but we also have joy and peace and love and faithfulness and all of that in the midst of the suffering. And that's the message that they need to hear. That was a tangent, but
no, it's okay. That was good. I was thinking, like, they were also doing it for God, though.
Yeah.
They were trying to make God see them as like holy. Like, look how good we are. We're obeying your law. We're doing everything right.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I see your heart.
Yeah.
And
I
your
see
heart is not in line with me.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a big reason why Jesus had to come too, was because up until Jesus, it wasn't works-based, but it became very, very works-based because they didn't have Jesus as that example. And so from, Adam up until Jesus, all of these people were going off of the law of Moses. And I think they, like you said, they wanted so badly for God to be proud of them that in their eyes, well, I'm sinful and my mind keeps taking me down these dark holes that I know aren't of God. And so I'm just going to act as if I'm doing all the things right, even if in my heart I know I'm not. And I mean, I've done that for many seasons of my life. So I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. And let's bring in some science. They say that everything goes from a state of order to disorder. And as the longer you go, like the more disordered and the more chaotic and the further away from God they got.
Yeah.
Which is probably another reason why they were kind of like, okay, it's time. Like, you all need Jesus.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And we obviously did and do, because the same thing is happening now. And the same thing's happening in the church. And I think the reason we keep having more Pharisee and Sadducee type people is because we continue having people that want to please God without reading their Bible and learning who God is and what God really intends. Right. Or they're not following. They
want to follow.
Oh, they want to follow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this world is, Satan is crafty, and he has a good way of making the world and the ways of the world, even mixed with God, seem enticing. Like, well, you can have God, but you can also have these things, right?
You know what I
like,
saw the other day that was crazy? A Bible verse that wasn't a Bible verse.
Oh, no.
Like, someone had shared it.
No.
And I read it, and I was like, so close. But, like, there was just something that didn't sit right with me, so I looked it up. It didn't even exist.
Oh, my gosh.
Be
careful
guys.
out there.
Read your own Bible.
Read
your own Bible.
And especially with AI, like, I am not going to tell anybody, I'm not going to be a mom, but get off of it. Like, quit asking it questions. God and the Holy Spirit will answer your questions for you. Do not let some demonic AI presence answer your questions. Okay, moving on.
Okay, the last one. Woe to you, for you build the tombs of prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. He was saying, woe to you. You said that if you lived back at the time where they were killing all of the prophets, that you would not do that. But then he's like, kind of predicting his own death. You're about to kill me.
Yep.
And I am a prophet.
Yep. You are literally the sons of who you say was so terrible, is what he's saying, because you're about to do exactly what they did.
Yeah, even though you say you never would.
Yeah. And so
Crazy.
in The Chosen, when this is all happening, like, they're in the Temple of Jerusalem, and, like, Jesus is, like, here, and you've got 3 Pharisees and the high priest, which is, like, the high priest, the man. And then you've got all of these people that are hearing Jesus preach, and then you've got his disciples. Okay, and his disciples at this point are like, we feel like you're about to die because you've told us now 3 times that you're going to, but, like, we're just not hearing it because we don't want to hear it, because he was their best friend, guys. Like, at this point, they walked together for 3 years. They loved him. They believed he was the Son of God. So not only was he their Savior and their Messiah, like, the same way I love him, they loved him that way. But he was right here. Like, he was next to them. They hugged him. They told him they loved him. They looked in his eyes. Like, this was their person. So he's basically standing up there, like, sacrificing himself by saying all of these things, because he's going hard on these guys. Like, these guys, nobody stood up to the Pharisees. Nobody stood up to the Sadducees. You let them do what they needed to do, and you listened to them. And that was it. And so he's not only, like, screaming and yelling these things to, like, try to get their attention, but then all of his disciples are back there, and they're like, did he just say that they're going to kill him? Like, did he just told them to kill him. Like, he basically said, that's still not the right one.
Therefore, I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you
Yes.
will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, to the son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar.
Yep.
Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation.
Yep. And then verse 37, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often have I longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and look, you are not willing. Look, your house is left you desolate, for I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Like he was basically saying, like, this is the last time you'll see me. This is the last sermon you're going to hear from me, and you're going to kill me just like they did. And so then you have all of his disciples that are just like, excuse me, sir, what? And we're going to go into the rest of that in just a minute, but it's powerful to see that it's powerful to see that he felt this way the whole time. That's literally why he was here on earth, but he waited up until now. Like, he knew the timeline of this, and he knew that, like, he couldn't say certain things to the Pharisees until it was time, right? And not because they were going to catch him up on his words, but because he knew the extent of what this was going to do. Like, it started an uproar. They killed him after this conversation. And so...
Yeah, but it was also a slow burn.
It was
been
a slow burn.
happening over the past 3 years. Like, they've hated
Right.
him for 3 years.
Right. And so, like, the buildup of that, like, he had to be patient with his knowledge is what I'm getting at here. Like, he could have come in on day one when he did that very first miracle and called the 12 disciples and marched his booty into Jerusalem and said all of this. Like, he could have. But there was 3 years of miracles to be done and lives to be met and people to understand who Jesus was, for them to actually believe he was the Messiah before any of this could come. So what I'm saying in that is, have some patience with your own walk. Like, you don't have to walk into your family's home of unbelievers and start screaming and condemning because they don't agree or believe the same way you do. Like, the process of planting seeds with unbelievers is slow, and it is a lot of seeds that you will plant by the way you live your life, and then God comes in and waters those and grows them and brings fruit out of all of them to bring those people to salvation. I don't know why I said that, but somebody needed to hear it, because it's a process. It really is. And so we've got to have patience with our faith, guys. We can't go into rooms and be aggressive. There's a time and a place for it, and I think that God allows that time and place when the right time and place happen. He did for Jesus. Jesus obviously boldly said all that he said, and it needed to be said. But not everything has to be said right away. And so show by the way you live your life and the way that you love other people, just like he did, before you get to the point where you're like, okay, guys, it's not getting through your head. Let's have a hard conversation, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. All right. Moving into chapter 24. And so after he left the temple, he went to the Mount of Olives, and pretty much the disciples asked him, like, tell us when the end of the world is going to happen. And Jesus went on a very long monologue that pretty much is all of chapter 24.
Yeah.
That's talking about the end of the age.
Yeah, and we can definitely break this down further if any of you have questions, but there's a couple things that I want to touch on with this. One being, this conversation, just to kind of set the tone for this conversation happens right after that moment. Okay, so the moment of them all seeing him say, like, you're going to kill me, and being okay with that, right? And so then they walk away with him, and they're asking him questions, and he's asking them questions. Do you see these things? He asked. Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. And they're still seeing this as literal. Okay, so they're seeing, like, the temple and the stones, and it's going to fall, and, like, the end of the world. And so they're like, when, Lord? Like, when is this going to happen? Mm-hmm. They're trying so hard to understand. And he basically gives them the same answer we all know, where nobody's going to know the day or the hours, but the warnings that he gives them in this conversation are very important, because they're the same warnings for us. Like, we are still in that nobody knows the day or the hour season. Nothing, so much has changed since then, but nothing's changed as far as we're still waiting. We're still waiting on him. We're still living in this world. And when I watch The Chosen and I read these things, it helps me think, like, those disciples most likely walked the rest of their life expecting him to come back, like, in their lifetime.
Yeah,
right?
even Paul thought it was he was going to come back in his lifetime.
I mean, and Paul never encountered Jesus himself, right? Or did he? I don't think he did, no. But even, Peter and John and Mary Magdalene and all these people that, like, he looked at them in the face and said, I will be back. I will be coming back. And so it's like they just waited and waited and waited. But I think that that's the heart posture that he wants us to have. That's why we don't know the day or the hour, because as a groom waits on his bride, I mean, physically think about that. A groom standing there at the altar waiting for his bride who he's going to spend his life with. But that wait, I would stand there eternally to wait for my husband. Like, I love Blake deeper than I've ever loved anybody. And so, like, I know that Jesus feels the same way about me, but that's how we're supposed to also be awaiting his arrival. Like, I'm going to be standing here with my tux on, ready for you, and not physically in, like, my outfit of the day, but, like, with my faith strong, with my, like, eyes open to what you are trying to do in my life. Like, I want to be... I don't know the right word here to say, but I don't want to be caught up wasting my life when he comes to get me. You know what I mean? And so it's like we've got to be aware, but then also he gives very strong warning to false messiahs and false prophets, and people that will appear as the Messiah, right? And do signs and wonders. And it talks a lot about the end times. And so it's good to see that, like, false prophets and signs and wonders and people spewing the gospel wrong, like made up verses, what Natalie was just talking about, that's been happening since the beginning of time. Like, it was happening when Jesus was here, it was happening before Jesus was here, it's happening today. And so we've got to be aware, and then also know that, like, where the truth of this is where we have to stay. We can't be out here consuming only preachers and podcasts and even things like this. Like, we can't be your God, guys. Like, you've got to dive in with him to really be able to grow, and to really flourish with him. But I want to touch on verse 23 and 24 where it talks about kind of the fake Messiah. Okay, so verse 23 I'll read first. Actually, we'll start in verse 22. If those days, we're going to start in 23. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, there he is, out in the wilderness, do not go out, or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even to the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Where there is a carcass, the vultures will gather. So what he's saying here is, you're going to know when it's me. You're going to know. For as far as the east to the west, you're going to know. But you're not going to know until it happens, okay? So when you hear of these messiahs and these fake prophets and all of these things, just know it's not me. Like, it's as simple as that. It's not me, and you know me, and so you should know it's not me. But I have a question, because I literally just wrote this down. I don't know even if I believe this. But from what he's saying here, do we think that there's going to be, like, an actual fake Messiah? I know Antichrist obviously is a thing, and that's coming, and that it says he will do signs and wonders. But do you think that, like, there's for real going to be like a I'm the Messiah man out here doing miracles like Jesus did? You know,
I think so.
I think so too.
I think so. I read
through Satan power, not
yes.
through God's power.
Yeah. But I read a series. It was obviously very fictional, but it was written around, like, the end times, like, if like, how would this actually, like, play out in, like, modern day, even though I think the series was written, like, in the early 2000s, but modern enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was a guy that showed up that was from Bethlehem, like, grew up in that region. They had, like, his birth certificates and everything, and he was going around saying he was Jesus, and he was healing people, and he was preaching the gospel and all of this stuff, and all these people were following him. Well, it turns out the story is centered around a journalist, I think, and a CIA operative. Like, they're working together. Well, they do all this research on this guy, and turns out that he has, like, created this whole backstory. Like, he just happened to be born in Bethlehem. That was just a coincidence. But then he, like, raised somebody from the dead, but it ended up being, like, the guy's twin brother.
Oh my gosh.
Like, one of them was really sick, and then, like, he raised a twin brother. Like, they had all of these elaborate things. Like, the people that he healed, he wasn't really healing. It wasn't that he was, like, healing them through Satan. It was like, oh, like, it was something very, I can't remember
They just
exactly.
twisted the
They just
story
kind of
enough.
twisted it,
Yeah.
yeah. Or like he was blind and now he can see, like they put contacts in him.
See,
And,
that was like my next question.
But for
was, like,
years.
does he have power? Because
No,
Satan doesn't
they
really have
set
power.
this up years in advance.
That's so
Like they put
crazy.
people like in place, like they knew this guy was blind, even though it was just like fake contacts.
Oh my gosh.
And like
Oh my gosh.
it was crazy. Like I'm reading this and I know that it's fake, but in my head I'm thinking, is this guy actually Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Like just because everything he was doing, and I was kind of along the same lines as this reporter and this operative, and they were like, is this guy really him? Because if he is him, you don't want to miss out.
Right.
There was a bunch of people that missed out the first time around.
Right.
There was people going mass exodus to Israel to see this guy because
Yeah.
they thought that he was the Messiah.
Yep.
And again, that was all a fiction story that I read. If you're interested in reading it, it's by Joel Rosenberg. I don't remember the exact books. It was a multi-book series, but
that
he's
would,
a really good author. You should read him.
that would be, I mean, I would think exactly how it would probably happen
Yeah.
today. Because, like, even me, if I heard that there was a man claiming to be Jesus doing signs and wonders, I would look into it. But if it aligned with this, then it would be hard not to believe it. And here's the thing about the enemy is that he knows this, and he knows God, and he knows the angels, and he knows Jesus. So he knows how to deceive Christians. And even those, like it says in here, even the elect, even the ones who are chosen by God, in the end times, some will fall away from the faith because of their deceitful ways. So if you don't know the Word of God, get in your Bible. Please, just read it.
Another thing that I found really interesting is starting in verse 36, it says, but concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. So even Jesus didn't know when he was going to come back.
Yeah.
For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. And I think it's so interesting that he compares the end of the world to the days of Noah, where he pretty much ended the world other than Noah and his family and everything that was on the ark.
Yeah, he gave it a good old reset.
Yeah, and that story starts back in Genesis 6, if you're interested. But I was going to read something from there, and it says in Genesis 6, 11, it says, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. And then he gives him directions on how to build the whole ark. But I just thought it was so interesting about how he was just like the world that he created that was so perfect. Again, we go from a state of order to disorder. That's how we're all tending.
Yeah.
But I'm like, how much worse does it have to get before he just comes back?
You know, I've asked him that. I really have, because I'm like, Lord, I need I need some supernatural
come back.
understanding here. But every time I do, and I ponder that question, he says, how many of my children, how many like you would not be with me in paradise if I came today?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're right. Like he hasn't come back yet because of his grace for us. He hasn't come back yet because he's giving us more time to spread the gospel, to get this to the people that we love, and and for us, like even those of us that are Christians that do know him, like there's so much that I want to do here on this earth as far as like influencing my kids. Granted, yes, I want Jesus to come back 100%. I am so ready to go home, my goodness. But at the same time, like I know people that I love wouldn't be going with me. I know that. And like I can't in my mind like be excited about that for them, you know? And so it's like that's got to motivate me to like be Jesus for those people. But then also when it comes to like my children, I want to raise them up to be people that understand the enemy's attacks. I want them to understand the enemy's intention, right? Because when you understand his intention, all of what's going on in the world makes so much more sense. You're like, he's literally taken this book, played the reverse Uno card, and then put that into the world. Like, and so it makes sense. And it makes sense why we need God so much and why his grace and love really is so evident, because he's like, I really could just like and y'all would all be gone. And I don't, because I love you and because like I actually do want you to spend eternity with me. I didn't just create you to suffer, actually, which a lot of people believe he did. Okay, so in verse 42, he says, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have to let this house be broken into. So you must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him." And so I don't think that this is trying to scare us and being all like, he's going to come steal you away in the nighttime. I think this is, again, a parable, an analogy of, like, you need to be aware. If you knew that a thief was coming, you would be standing there with your AK-47 ready to shoot. Like, my husband would. He'd be like, yeah.
At least us in Oklahoma would be.
Right, yeah. I guess maybe everybody that lives, maybe not redneck Oklahoma, not everybody has guns. We don't have an AK-47, guys. I'm not some crazy person. That was just dramatic of me. But you would be prepared, right? Like, you would be prepared to fight and to protect your home. And so it's the same thing here. He's like, you don't know when I'm coming. I could come in literally 2 seconds, or I could come in 30 years or 300 years, but you need to be ready.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, I know I've even said this, like, oh, when I get to this point, then I will work on my relationship with you. Like, when I graduate high school, then I will work on my relationship with you. When I get married, when I go to college, when I have a kid, like, you know, I think we keep, like, putting it off. And he's like, don't do that. Like, be ready now, because you don't know when I'm going to come back. You don't.
And I think another thing that he wants us to understand is that doing all of those things with him creates a really abundant life. Like the whole, I have given you good plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future. It's not, I've given you this hope and future outside of the life that you've created, and so you've got to lose your entire life to go get this. What he's saying is, I've given you this life. You have all these blessings around you. I want to give you a hope and a future in this life that you have right now, but your selfishness has to go away. You got to realize that you need me, and then let me walk with you, and then you got to allow him to grow you. But it's not, I want to be a burden to you. It's that I want to walk through high school with you. I want to walk through marriage with you. I want to walk through raising kids with you. I want to teach you how to do this so that you can do it with freedom and not be anxious and depressed the whole time you're doing it, wishing you didn't have to do it. Because I've so many times like prayed intensely for a husband and for my kids and for a home and for all of these things, and then complained when I got them because they were too much, or I didn't want to do the dishes, or my kids had attitudes. And he's like, girl.
Or I still don't have time.
Right, or I still don't have time. Or, and that's the whole thing is like, this, I have learned that this is what fuels me to be the best version of me in all those areas of my life. But if I don't do this first, then I struggle and I have to fight my way through every day because I'm fighting my own mind against these things. When I step into the spirit with it, I see my children as the blessing that they are. I see the dishes in my sink as the blessing that I have running water and dishes to even wash and a home to even be in, right? Like, my mind shifts. That's the renewal of our mind that he talks about in Romans, or Paul talks about it. So that renewal of your mind shifts to where these things are no longer burdensome, but they are blessings, right? And then the motivation to do those things also increases because reality check, if the Son of God did not come to be served but to serve, your goal here is not to be served. It's to serve others. But
that's good.
It's hard to get there, and it's hard to get to a place where you love that. And that's why people hate the submission aspect, and they hate the whole submit to God and submit to your husband and submit to your wife. Well, I don't want to submit to anybody. I don't want to have to serve anybody. I don't want to be controlled. Like, right, I get that, but like, what freedom is it when you're not being controlled by anybody? You're actually in relationship with the one living God, and your submission is love. It's not control, right? So anyways, it's my 2 cents on submission. We have let this episode get a little frisky, so we're going to go through chapter 25 real quick and kind of wrap up where we are at, and then I think we'll split off and do 26 through 28 in another episode since this one's getting kind of long.
Yeah. Okay, so in chapter 25, it starts off with Jesus telling another parable, and it's called the parable of the 10 virgins. And in this parable, it talks about 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they didn't take any oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. So we have 10 women, 5 who brought oil, 5 that didn't. Then the bridegroom starts taking a while, and so they all go to sleep. And then all of a sudden someone's like, hey, he's coming. He's coming. The bridegroom's coming. Well, the ones that were prepared and brought oil were obviously ready to go into the wedding party with the bridegroom. And those that didn't were like, hey, give us some of your oil. Like, we didn't bring any. And they were like, sorry, go buy some. Because if we share with you, we may not have enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went and bought their own oil, and then they came to the wedding, and they said, Lord, Lord, open up to us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. Again, just signifying like we don't know when he's going to come back. We have to be ready, and we can't start after he comes. It's going to be too late.
It is going to be too late. Yeah. And he tells the exact same story with the bags of gold, same exact thing. And it's not crazy to me, but when I think back on this and Jesus standing there and saying these things to the disciples are probably like, can you just spell it out? Like, can you just say it without saying it, you know? Because he was kind of confusing. Like, he would just kind of talk in these circles, and then they'd have to really process it and really understand it. And he did that from the beginning, so they were really used to it, I'm sure, at this time. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I have to note, too, is that they didn't have full understanding when he said these things, because they didn't really know he was about to die. And they sure didn't know that he was going to come back to life. And they also had no idea that they were about to get the Holy Spirit put inside of them, and that this whole big thing was literally the gospel of Jesus Christ and the Messiah. Like, they were living it. And so as they're asking these questions and he's telling them these things, in my mind, they probably had the perception of it that they needed to be ready for Jesus, but more for like the end of the world, not for like Jesus coming back, because Jesus was there. Like, he was sitting in front of them.
Yeah, but another thing along with that is a lot of people thought that the Messiah would come in and he would take out the whole Roman Empire.
Yeah, like he was going to be a gladiator.
Yeah, and he was going to set up his kingdom. And so I think a lot of them thought that maybe at the beginning that he was about to conquer everything.
Yeah. Well, Judas did. And that's something we're going to talk about in the next episode a little bit more. But Judas really, it says that he had kind of this mindset that Jesus was not, I don't know the right word here. I read it in Enduring Word, but like gladiator enough. Like, Jesus wasn't revolt-ish enough, where he wasn't like trying to come in and overtake. Like you said, like Judas thought that the Messiah was going to be this like army hero, and that he was going to come in and make everything right and give equality to all things and take away taxes, and you know, and then that wasn't Jesus, and that kind of made him mad. We'll touch more on that later. But I think that the disciples, you know, they understood that Jesus wanted them to love, and they understood kind of the whole goal here, but they didn't understand the full picture yet. And so later in that chapter, in verse 20, when he says, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters, you did for me. And so I think that it's important for us to note that this is the core of who Jesus was, is serving those who were less than, quote unquote, because in his eyes, nobody is less than. And so as they're supposed to be prepared for the day of the hour, I want you guys to hear clearly that that doesn't mean like you just sitting in your room reading your Bible all day long every day. Like, being prepared is living that life, but then serving the least of these, like going out and being the hands and feet of Jesus to the people around us, even if it's just the people inside your home at first. Like, that is how we are prepared, because he doesn't want to find us with idle hands, right? And he's watching at all times. Like, he's here right now, so it's not like anything we're doing is a secret to him. And so how much more rewarding will it be for us when we do see him face to face, if we can confidently stand there and say, like, I knew you and I loved you, and I know the only reason that I'm here is because of what you did for me, but I spent my life making sure that everybody around me knew that same love. So I think that that is where we really just need to keep our mind and our focus on who Jesus was, right? And who he was, and how we can live our lives in according to that. But one other thing that's important in this chapter is where it talks about stewarding what he's given us. And I think that we can live this life in a very mundane way where we just go about our day and we do our tasks and we love the people around us and that's it. And we go to bed and God's probably proud of that, right? Where he's like, you're doing good. You love me. You read your Bible today. Like, good job. But then there's the other side of this where just as Jesus worked hard and he stewarded well what he was given, God has given all of us very specific gifts. Sometimes that looks like spiritual gifts on the inside and like ways to discern things. Sometimes that looks physical, telling me to do podcasts, telling us to do this thing together. Like whatever it is that he's put in front of you, we are to steward it well, but we're not to steward it well with our own selfish interests as far as the gain of it comes. We're supposed to steward it well with the trust and faith and knowing that me being obedient in this area of my life is solely for obedience purposes, solely for the fact that God told me to do it, and I'm going to steward this to prove to God that I am faithful to him, that I am going to be obedient to him, not to prove to him, but to show him that, because our focus is not how am I serving these men, how am I satisfying men, it's how am I satisfying God. But in satisfying God, you actually also satisfy men in the way, not men, man, humans, in the way that we are intended to be satisfied, which is through love and kindness and peace and generosity. If you are in relationship with God and loving God in those ways, it's naturally going to flow out of you. And so it happens without you even having to force it to happen. But what you have to force at the beginning is this part, is learning who God is and being prepared and being willing to do those things that Jesus did, even when it's not what we want to do. And that's not always easy. That's why we need Jesus. That's why we need Jesus, friends. Okay, guys, this got a little long, so we're going to wrap up with this recap, and then we will restart and do chapter 26, 27, and 28 to finish out Matthew. See you on the next episode.